Eliza and I recently took the ultimate Southern California food road trip, visiting restaurants, breweries, ice cream shops, and farms from San Diego to the San Gabriel Valley in Los Angeles County. You can find these very fun episodes in the This Is Taste feed. And we can't think of a better time to support these restaurants. Thanks to our friends at Visit California for supporting this epic journey. Visit www.visitcalifornia.com to plan the perfect getaway to California, the ultimate playground.
I mean, call me crazy, but I feel like you should have at least 3 to 4 styles of Dijon mustard in your refrigerator.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you need whole grain, you got your hot honey, you've got your classic, and there's just so many different things you can do.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rothbard. Today's episode is all about Dijon mustard and brings a couple of mustard lovers into the studio. First up is Jeremy Solomon. He's the chef owner of 2 singular and sensational restaurants in Brooklyn, Augie's Counter and the newly opened Pits. We talk about what he's been cooking and all the creative ways he thinks about using Dijon mustard even in dessert. Next up is a real treat. We get to talk with a mustard sommelier. His name is Brandon Collins, and he helps develop recipes for Maille mustard, which is honestly one of my personal favorite brands. Brandon takes us through some of the company's history before giving us a taste of some rare Dijons. He brought mustards to the studio. It was so great. I hope you enjoy these conversations. Jeremy Solomon, welcome to This Is Taste. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, Jeremy, before we get into some serious mustard talk, I have to ask you about Pits, which is your second restaurant you just opened in Red Hook. I'm such a fan of Augie's Counter. It was one of my favorite restaurants that opened recently, and you've had you on the show in the past. But tell me about your new restaurant. Very exciting. You're in a great space in Red Hook. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we just opened. We're in a corner location on Van Brunt Street, if you know Red Hook, and it is right now we opened up with dinner and a bar, and the narrative leans away from Eastern European cuisine, which is what Augie's Counter is really rooted in and known for, and this explores more of my Southern roots and experiences, while also pairing it with some French cuisine and Americana, if you will. Yeah, it's a quirky space. It's fun. It's eclectic. It's just like, it's kind of like, as our slogan says, it's a joyful mess. Yeah.
Talk about some of the dishes on it, and maybe if mustard has a little bit of makes a little cameo, Dijon mustard.
It absolutely does. We have on our appetizer list, we have a cold meatloaf tea sandwich. So essentially, it's a pork pate with pork belly, liver, and fat back. It's we chill it so all the juices kind of get congealed. We slice it up, goes on really fluffy white sandwich bread, and then it gets Dijon mustard. It's going to get a little bit of mayo, a onion jam, and then it gets crusted in a wreath of parsley, like little tea time sandwiches.
I bet it's gorgeous.
And it's been selling really well. People really dig it.
So exciting. I can't wait to visit Pits. Well, let's jump right in. So when did you first realize that Dijon-style mustard can be used across so much cooking, both at home and in restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was exposed to mustard at a very early age, and I mean, my parents used to take me to diners in South Florida, and my father would always order a side of mustard or Dijon mustard with his turkey club for just dipping. So there'd be mustard in the sandwich, but also extra mustard so it was just really instilled in me that you should always have mustard with maybe literally everything, even French fries. I mean, we were not a ketchup household. It was always either mustard or Dijon mustard with your French fries. So I feel like from an early age, that was the beginning. They were my humble mustard beginning.
Dijon mustard was flowing through your veins.
Yes.
In many ways. I really wanted to have you in to ask you the simple question. Can you describe the flavor of Dijon mustard in like a way that I know you think about flavor profiles as a chef, but expand my mind about the flavor of Dijon?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm no mustard somm, so
we'll definitely hear from the mustard somm.
Well, I think first you can need the punch, kind of like the zestiness, the pepperiness. I think about the episode of The Nanny where Fran Drescher eats wasabi. It wasn't mustard, but she kind of falls off her stool, and all of a sudden her nasal like passageways are cleared up. And I feel like that's what you want from mustard, from Dijon mustard. You want like your nasal passageways to just like breathe, and like it should be spicy and savory, umami. I don't know. To me, that's what a mustard profile would be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good way to say it. It wakes you up, but it also excites with all the glutamates and those really like spiky flavors. And then so let's talk about going from youth into working professionally as a chef. What are some fun ways that you've cooked with Dijon mustard, and maybe are there some surprising applications for Dijon?
Yeah, some of the surprising ways that I have cooked with Dijon mustard. Well, I mean, that's a career's worth of recipes that I have to go back to. But I feel like the most that I have used Dijon has always been in stews and braises. Definitely like a rabbit stew I've used Dijon in, or chicken stew. And then I feel like, obviously sandwiches, I use it with everything. I'm dipping in it. I'm putting it in the layers. So I feel like there's multiple ways to use mustard, but I kind of have to rack my brain about it.
Yeah. You're thinking stews and braises are great. And I got to ask you, you spent some serious time working at Prune, which, legendary Prune. And I have to believe that Prune used a little mustard, just knowing that restaurant a bit.
Yeah. She used Gabrielle used quite a bit of Dijon. I know with the Triscuits and the Dijon mustard, and then the sardines. And then also I know that she used it in braises as well. So it was pretty versatile.
Yeah, I love that memory of that Triscuit. She was doing tin fish a minute ago.
Ahead of her time.
Ahead of her time. But did you have Dijon, available for specials? I mean, was it being integrated? I think of her cooking as being mustard heavy in some ways, just from memories.
Yeah, lots of dressings had them. Even like the bechamel sauce, I think had it. Like any cream based sauce, there was a little bit of mustard in it. And also there was mustard in like a couple of fish dishes that I remember. So yeah, there was definitely, it ran through the veins of the restaurant.
I love that. So when you think about cooking with hot honey Dijon, and we're really hot honey pilled here in our society. I mean, it's really everywhere, and we're really hot honey pilled these days, and you see it showing up everywhere, including with Maille. You have a hot honey version of Maille, which I think is really terrific when hot honey is integrated into Dijon. What comes to mind as a chef when you're given hot honey Dijon?
So when I think of hot honey Dijon, I think of two things. One, I think of pigs in a blanket.
Whoa, bro.
Marrying, like I feel like hot honey Dijon is like it's American French, and then I think pigs in a blanket are so classically American. So I don't know. For me, that would be like the ultimate kind of dipping pairing for that. And then I also think of the fried Country Captain Poussin that we have at Pitt's, which is my new restaurant.
Yeah.
Because I've been exploring different condiments. This is the first time I really have made fried like chicken or fried poisson in a large format like this. So I'm eating it every day, and I'm trying different dipping accoutrements with it.
Oh man, I love this Country Captain.
Yeah.
Talk about that dish. What's in it?
Yeah, so it's a riff on Country Captain chicken, which is almost like this curry-like stew that's known in the South with all these different spices. So we buttermilk brine our poisson, then we fry it, and then it gets the same spices that are in Country Captain. So there's cardamom and turmeric and etc. other spices, and then it's served with a carrot ginger salad. But I've been eating it every day of my life, and definitely have had it with Dijon.
Yeah. Sounds like a delicious dish. So tell me about buying mustard, for the home kitchen. What do you look for? And tell me what excites you about Maille. I know it's a brand that you've used and loved in the past, and really let's shift it to the home kitchen.
Yeah, well, I think every home cook should have a variety of Dijon and mustard in their home. I mean, there's mustard for literally every occasion, and I know that at Aggie's Counter we've used Maille as our mustard for the tuna melt, which is a daytime dish that we're known for. And I definitely keep a jar at home to make tuna salad, to make a tuna melt. So that can translate from restaurant to home. And yeah, I mean, you should be having it. I mean, call me crazy, but I feel like you should have at least 3 to 4 styles of Dijon mustard in your refrigerator.
Yeah,
because I mean, you need whole grain, you got your hot honey, you've got your classic, and there's just so many different things you can do.
I love that because I think there's definitely a wide, expansive universe for Dijon. As you said, it's not just the smooth version we may be mostly familiar with, but I love when it's a little bit chunkier and you can get some mustard seeds in there.
Yeah,
it's a little. Sometimes I think that's better. How do you think about cooking with that textured mustard?
Yeah, I mean, like a whole grain mustard can be used in various ways. I mean, we whip it into a butter and make a mustard butter that also gets my Dijon as well, and some white pepper, black pepper, and then we smear it on top of a lamb chop or mutton chop, at Pitt's. So I feel like it gives you that kind of nice pop. There's also this sourness, like tanginess to it that I think really marries well with like a fatty protein or butter. So
great rec. I mean, can you use Dijon in dessert?
Yeah, why not? Make a Dijon ice cream. And I say it so casually, like just
why
whip
not?
that up.
Get your Paco Jet, get your
Yeah.
homemaker. No,
Yeah.
no, it sounds cool. Tell me about it.
I mean, I've only ever made mustard ice cream once, and it wasn't. It's also, the Dijon doesn't have to be the star of it necessarily, but it can be there to accent and help along flavors. I think paired with vanilla is actually quite an interesting combo and delicious. And I don't think it's something that people should shy away from.
Jeremy, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. French Dijon mustard edition. Are you ready?
I am. Let's do it.
Your favorite way to use mustard in a salad?
My favorite way to use mustard in a salad would be in a really creamy dressing, like a buttermilk dressing, lots of mustard, maybe even multiple mustards, throw in the whole grain, throw in some honey, maybe like a trifecta of delicious mustard creaminess.
Love that. Your favorite way to use mustard when cooking meat?
Marinate in mustard. Definitely marinate your chicken in mustard and some spices and aromatics. I think it helps develop like a really beautiful crust. It also can help tenderize it. So I think that's a great way to use it.
A flavor that pairs with mustard that might surprise some people.
Maple syrup.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
This is cool.
I can say confidently that it is a superb pairing. I think most people are like, what do you use it on? And I would probably use it with a pork chop.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mustard pork chop. They're bedfellows in the best way possible.
And a little bit of sweetness from the maple goes a long way.
Delicious. Last one, your favorite way to use mustard on a sandwich?
Both on it and on the side. I would say on the side, mostly because I just love to dip copious amounts of mustard onto the very corner of the sandwich. Because the more mustard, the merrier.
Well said. Jeremy Solomon, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thanks for having me.
Brandon Collins, we are here. You're a mustard sommelier?
Yeah. It's a term I didn't think existed either. So,
Did you make it up, or was it something?
So the brand actually, Antoine Claude Maille in the 1700s actually said that whenever he opened boutiques, he wanted to have a mustard sommelier in every one of his boutiques. It didn't really come to fruition until about 2008, 2009, whenever my predecessor actually developed the training program. And then whenever I started with the company, they were like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Sure.
Sign me up, obviously.
Yeah, let's do it."
Okay, so what does the job entail exactly?
So, one, it's part kind of brand ambassador, right? The understand of what Maille is and where it came from. And the other is understanding that mustard is very nuanced, right? And there's so much more to it than just the condiment, right? It's an ingredient. There are also vegetables. It's the grandfather of a lot of the vegetables in the Brassica family, right? So think Brussels sprouts and cabbage. Garlic mustard is one of the most original condiments and seasonings that we know of. It's over 3,000 years that we have like documented usage of it. So it's kind of a little bit of everything. I'm a historian. I understand the different nuances of all of the mustards. Well, not all of them. There's still always training involved, as with any wine sommelier or water sommelier or whatever other sommeliers exist. And also kind of out there preaching the gospel of how great mustard is and just delicious.
Yeah, mustard is great. We just heard from Jeremy, and we heard about from a chef's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
You're a chef as well, but you're more, obviously you work across many different disciplines. And do you work in like the R&D for like new mustards?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things as we go through the process of developing new flavors, it is something that I influence as much as I possibly can. But I also rely on our R&D counterparts who are way smarter than I am, or much more intelligent than me, I guess is the best way, that understands how the different flavor molecules and things will interact with the mustards and how to make them delicious as we go through. Sometimes I'm like, "Hey, I think this would be amazing." And they just look at me like I'm insane. And then sometimes I'm like, "Hey, this may not taste great at all." And they're like, no, that works perfect.
Yeah.
So especially over in Europe, we have some amazing flavors that are just insane. And I would love to bring them all here to the States, but it's not to be currently.
Well, I'm sure you're heading over to, Dijon quite a bit.
Yeah.
Going to the big mustard land.
Yeah, the home, right?
Home
where mustard began in my eyes. No, it's Dijon is such an amazing place, right? It's especially the mustard capital. And then you have Beaune, right, which is kind of like the wine capital of Burgundy, and then you have Lyon, which is basically the food capital of Burgundy. So you have this kind of beautiful little triangle. But Dijon being the county seat of Burgundy as well, you kind of really get a feel for why mustard grows there so well. The red vines that grow the grapes that make some of the best wines in the world. They grow in a very rocky, clay-ridden soil, and mustard grows extremely well in that environment. So they were able to kind of literally grow grapes on one side and mustard on the other, and then be able to turn that into this amazing condiment that goes so well with the wines that they produce in the region. And it's just an absolutely beautiful area.
I mean, the harmony between wine and mustard is obvious. I mean, there's a real agricultural root to it.
Yes. Yeah. It's almost like what grows together goes together, right?
Yep.
Mustard and wine go extremely well together.
We say that all the time on the show. I think that's such a great reminder of how you should think about pairing. And I want to go back a little bit about Maille's history and tell me, how did it go from being a small product in Dijon to being in lots of stores, being my favorite mustard on the shelf. I've been buying it probably since I started buying groceries.
Yeah.
You get your first apartment, you're like, I gotta get my jar of Maille.
Yeah.
Obviously.
It's the one mustard that I've kind of eaten growing up, even in Ohio. It was not something that it wasn't something that every house had. But so again, we started over 250 years ago. 1747 is whenever Antoine Claude Maille actually kind of started the brand. And then, as we go out through history, it became the mustard of kings and queens, the King of England, Queen of England, the Tsars of Russia, Catherine the Great, and obviously the kings and queens of Burgundy, right? So which the King of France actually was trying to curry favor with because they actually had more money. The Dukes of Burgundy had more money than the King of France did during doing a lot of time, even a bigger army as well. So, which is always very interesting. And then as we go through the process in about the mid to probably like the 1950s, 1960s, the tagline "Il n'y a que Maille" came out, which is, for lack of a better term and very, very loosely translated, I'm sure I'm going to get flack for this, but it basically means my mustard is my mustard. Il n'y a que Maille. And once that kind of took off, it's very similar to some of the other mustards that we have here that had a very famous tagline. And it kind of really started taking off from there. And then the quality has always been recognized culinarily. And it just kind of has slowly built this sort of mass following of every time you crack open a jar of Maille, you're going to get the best quality mustard, the best quality seeds, and it's going to be super consistent. It's not going to let you down. And it's going to make everybody happy. And it looks cool. Like, it just looks really
It really does look cool. I'm glad you bring that up because aesthetic is so important.
Yeah.
You know, I asked Jeremy this question. I want to ask you, like, point blank. What does Dijon mustard taste like? What's the flavor?
So mostly you're going to get some horseradish notes, right? Because the same glucosinolates that give you the kind of heat are the same that you get in horseradish and the same that you get in Brussels sprouts and cabbage, right? You get a nice hint of vinegar and you get this beautiful kind of salty, smooth creaminess on the palate. I think one of the really cool things about Dijon in general, and especially Maille, is the way that we process the seeds is it doesn't come up through your olfactory senses, and it doesn't make you cry and sweat like some of the like Coleman's or even some like Tewksbury and those types of mustards.
Oh, you're
right?
coming for them. You're coming for them.
Which are delicious mustards. Don't get me wrong.
You don't have to say that.
I am a mustard sommelier for all, not just the one. But I do prefer Maille over everybody else.
You'll put Dijon on a hot dog, for example.
Well, 100%.
Good.
Yeah, I'll put Dijon on anything, and it's super chill, right? It's a lot of people kind of think Dijon is this super spicy mustard, but with Maille, it's not, and it's the way that we process. It's the way that we make the mustard itself. So
yeah, like back when this style of mustard was being created and evangelized, what was the mustard landscape like? Because we hear about these other brands, and we use the term yellow mustard, and like what was Dijon and facing when they were trying to enter the American market?
Basically the reason whenever Dijon was created, right? It was created in the late 1800s. They were utilizing the verjus before it became the wine, or before it became wine. So it was usually mustard seeds, it was verjus, it was salt, it was water. And that was basically it. And it was there to add flavor to meat, right? Especially during that point in time, like culinarily, we were just kind of getting started, right? And a lot of times it was there to kind of cover up some rotten notes, maybe to some extent. Mustard is antibacterial and it's antimicrobial, right? So it can really kind of help store and cure things and kind of keep them a little bit safer. And the reason why it was kind of designed was for that exact reason, right? It was used as a seasoning, not so much as a condiment or a way to kind of make foods more edible. And then whenever it started coming over into the States, right, it kind of came over in that same sort of vein where it was like, okay, we have yellow mustard, and yellow mustard, French's being the big one, right? They started off as creamy yellow salad dressing or something to that extent. Right. And it was just kind of the not the antithesis to what French's was, but it was just a different mustard, right? It added a different flavor profile. It wasn't nearly as turmeric laden. It wasn't nearly as acidic either. And it just added a different dynamic. I think that both mustards play extremely well in a lot of different things. Like where I'm going to use my Dijon in a potato salad, I may not use French's, but I'll put them both on a hot dog. I'll put them both on a burger. That's just kind of the yellow mustard sort of world to me is the same sort of mentality. But whenever it comes to Dijon itself, it came over as sort of that like foreign thing.
There was probably like a level of exoticism there. Like it was clearly French. It had a name that we knew was French. Fancy. I'm cooking with Dijon tonight. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And people were coming over, right, and bringing the mustard with them from their homelands. And it was just in the same way that Tewksbury, in the same way that Coleman's got over here, and things along that line. It's just migration really kind of influences a lot of what we eat.
Well, let's talk about how to cook with Dijon because I think we will be tasting a number of styles of Dijon because there is no monolith here.
Yep. Many
different styles of Dijon, and we're going to go over it. But in general, let's talk about the classic, the original Dijon. I want to hear from you, like some cool ways that we can cook with it. We know about lemon Dijon chicken.
Yeah.
We know that. But what else are we doing here?
So one of the really cool things, and everybody kind of loses their mind whenever I say this, but Dijon reacts with chocolate the same way that espresso does, right? So if a lot of times whenever you're making like double chocolate brownies or chocolate cake, it calls for like that powdered espresso. If you don't have powdered espresso, because I don't keep powdered espresso in my house, you can kind of do a 1-for-1 with Dijon, and it is going to react the exact same way. The vinegar, the salt, and the mustard seed itself will actually help to enhance the flavor of that chocolate, and it's not going to taste like you're eating a mustard brownie. The old style I like to really put, or a stone ground, I like to put on top of like really high fat vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
It adds that like bitter, spicy crunch, similar to whenever we put olive oil on it, right? Same sort of idea. And it's really, really good in breads. It's great just kind of as like that underlying flavor. And to me, the way that I view mustard in general, and especially Dijon, is it's a seasoning, right? I think we've put it into this condiment category because that's what we've always known it as. But it works so well in enhancing the flavors of everything else. It plays so nicely in the sandbox box with everything.
Oh, yeah, because it has an iconic bite and it has an iconic acidity.
Exactly.
And you're going to get a little bit of that iconic flavor and it's going to be transported into other things. What's the vanilla ice cream brand? Let me ask you.
Van Leeuwen is the one that I usually use, that like super high fat. I even something like a Breyers too, like works extremely well in that as well because it has that like nice pure vanilla flavor. Absolutely amazing.
I love it. What about honey mustard? Mm-hmm. What about honey? How do you cook with honey mustard? Because I think some listeners might think that's a dated flavor. That's like the 90s, but no.
Yeah. And I think there are a couple of different things, right? I think that the honey mustard that we know in the U.S., right, is very cloyingly sweet, right? It's almost like eating candy, which always lends itself really well to like, pretzels and things along that line. The Maille is a honey Dijon, so it's not nearly as cloyingly sweet as a lot of the others that are out there on the market, and it has a nice spice level to it that you get from the Dijon. So for me, it's great. Again, doing it as a glaze for chicken, or I mix it with a little bit of mayonnaise and glaze my turkey with it for Thanksgiving, and then just kind of bake it in the oven and keep it like nice and creamy and absolutely delicious. I love throwing it on roasted potatoes, like roasted potatoes, rosemary, a little bit of honey mustard as a side for like pork chops or something of that nature.
So you're roasting it with the honey mustard atop. So you're kind of tossing the raw potatoes in oil and spice.
Yep.
Honey mustard, and then you just roast for like, your normal time.
Yeah, like 35, 40 minutes at 350, 360 degrees.
What's the potato choice?
I usually do like a fingerling, like the little banana fingerlings or something along that line. Just because, one, my local grocery store has now started getting them constantly, which was not always the case. And I like the flavor. I like being able to leave the skin on them. I like just kind of having these little beautiful, delicious morsels to snack on.
Yeah, but with a little bit of honey Dijon, I'm into this idea. We have to talk about salad dressing. The way I cook mostly with my Dijon, which I love and I always have on hand. I'm definitely using it in a salad dressing.
Yeah.
I always think about salad dressings, either going the vinegar side or the lemon side. Yeah. Do you have a point of view here? Opinions?
I mean, I like them both.
Sure. Not asking you to pick one. Sorry.
I have a very, so my family is German, so I have a very affinity for a lot of acid, just in general. And I tend to always make very high vinegar acid dressings whenever I make a salad dressing, to my wife's chagrin, because she's like, there's way too much acid on you. I'm like, no, it's perfect. It's absolutely delicious. But the beauty about using, especially a Dijon mustard in a dressing, is that it helps to emulsify it, right? It helps keep that temporary emulsion that you get whenever you shake it up and kind of be able to dress it on something. If I'm making a Caesar salad, I want lemon and I want that beautiful pop of citrus, but if I'm doing like a spring mix salad or something where I'm doing a vinaigrette, it's Dijon. It's a high amount of vinegar. Usually for me, apple cider or sherry. I love sherry vinegar. It's
Me too.
a small addiction.
Yeah.
And then some good olive oil mixed with avocado oil. I tend to not like the super bitterness that even a good olive oil brings. I like to blend it a little bit.
I love that. Avocado oil in a salad dressing to offset some astringency, bitterness, and great tip there. I love that. So you were cool and you brought a bunch of Maille to the studio. We have it in front of us on a table. Before we get into the tasting, because I really want to taste, and you're going to tell me a little bit about some of these great products. How are we buying Maille? We obviously can see it in the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the guys, but you brought some special ones. Is there any other place to buy it?
So some you can get on Amazon. So like the Mike's Hot Honey Dijon is available on Amazon, so you can get it through there. We have a little jar that came from the Dijon boutique. So if you are in Dijon or if you're in France and can make it out to Dijon, I highly, highly, highly suggest just going to Dijon, because it's an absolutely amazing place. But there just so happens to be the oldest mustard store in the world happens to be in Dijon, and it is the Maille Boutique. And it's really, really cool because we have on the wall, we have decrees from Emperor Napoleon. We have a bunch of crocs down in the basement that were given to us by the French Division of Antiquities. Whenever they find a shipwreck, they will bring them over to us.
Oh, fun.
And still have like all the writing on the outside of it. But the coolest thing about it is that you can get the mustards in a crock. And what they do is they have 5 flavors that come straight from the tap. And there's like a regular Dijon with Chablis wine that is noticeably spicier than what you get in the store. Just because of the way that it's processed and the fact that there's no preservatives and the fact that it's just wine and not a ton of vinegar. There's a white truffle. There's a black truffle seasonally. And then we have a Parmesan black truffle. There is a pink grapefruit. And then there is a whiskey smoked black pepper. And again, these rotate out. And then there's an old style also that doesn't have
So you have to go to the store to.
You have to go there directly. Yeah, we just so happen to have one here because I know people.
Yeah, you got to contact.
Yeah.
You know a guy in Dijon.
Yeah. Every once in a while, Beranger will send me something.
So Amazon, obviously at the grocery store. If you go to Dijon, you can pick it up. Let's get on to the tasting. I'd love to go through these.
Yeah, perfect.
We are tasting through the Maille library.
Yep.
A vertical tasting. And no, it's not by vintage, but we can just pretend it's a vertical.
Works
tasting.
for me.
You're a sommelier after all. So I've asked you to place it in order that kind of reflects a progression. I think it's really cool that Maille has so many different styles. When I was looking at the website and what you sell, the Rich Country really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
It's called Rich Country. Yep. Looks amazing. So we'll get to that one. But I am going to start with whole grain.
Yep.
And I think what's cool is I'm cracking here. I'm cracking these. Wow, this is beautiful.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
I spent my whole career trying to make caviar out of mustard seeds, and 9 times out of 10, my cooks would bring them up to me and they're like, I think I did it right. And I'm like, no, that's burnt. And here this whole time I had this amazing product that the beauty is that we basically soak the seeds. We very, very, very minimally process them. We run them through just to kind of crack them open a little bit. And that's it. There's sugar. So this is one of the few portions of Maille that do contain sugar, and it's to help kind of counteract some of that bitterness that you're going to get from the hull. But aside from that, you're going to get a spice. You're going to get a beautiful pop, almost like a caviar, and it adds amazing texture to basically anything that you put it in.
It's such a great call when you have these bursts of mustard seeds and they kind of like spread over the sandwich, over the bread, or if you want to put them on any kind of cheese even, that's really fun.
Great with cheese.
All right, we're moving on to Rich Country. So this is the one that I was referring to.
So Rich Country.
What does it mean?
So basically, it's just a style. It's a country style of mustard, and the idea is that it's for lack of a better term, it's Dijon mixed with old style, right? It's kind of like if the two had a baby. There's some herbs and spices in there as well, but it adds this kind of amazing depth of complexity to it. It adds the texture that you get from the old style. It adds that kind of spice that you get from the Dijon Original. And then it has this beautiful level of spice that kind of just changes the flavor profile a little bit.
Very cool. Ratio is like perfect. Yeah. it doesn't feel like it's leaning either or. It definitely has its own identity. I could see myself using that in like a potato salad.
It's great in potato salad. It's great in like mashed potatoes too. Like I'll add it into mashed potatoes in lieu of butter and milk. In order to be able to, because you keep that creaminess, but you don't necessarily have to add as much fat to it. So, if you're in a weight loss journey or anything along that line.
So we're here at the original, which is the one that we all love and know. And
the Dijon original is it's super mellow. It doesn't overpower your olfactory senses. And one of the cool things is the reason why we became the mustard of the kings and queens of Europe is because a lot of times they were wearing makeup, right? And they didn't want the commoners to see their makeup run. So the way that Maille reacts to your olfactory senses, it didn't make you sweat and it didn't make you cry. So your makeup wouldn't run in front of the commoners, and that's why we were named the mustard of the kings and queens of Europe.
That's cool. I mean, it's the mustard that I know. It's like straightforward. Definitely doesn't have the bite, but definitely has the kind of like the elements you're talking about with the horseradish. So we've tried whole grain, rich country, and then the original, which, just really cool to kind of do the tasting. But now we're going to move into the special one you brought me from France.
So this is our Dijon Original made with Chablis wine. And it's the crock that it's in is actually a crock that we made in commemoration of the Olympics in France. So it's a very limited, small batch run of the crocks themselves. But this is going to have definitely different notes compared to what it is that you have that's in the jar, right? Not nearly as much vinegar, more in the wine side of it. Flavor is going to be a little bit spicier, a little bit more pungent. Which is wild, right? You're literally tasting the same mustard, but just processed slightly differently.
There's something about straight from the tap that's different. You taste it in the original.
Yep.
But the original is more utility.
Yep. Exactly.
And this is really nice. It's what you'll get at nicer restaurants too. They'll have a version of this at them. The Balthazars of the world, the McNally joints. Okay, so we're moving on to the honey. Yep. Let's talk about honey mustard. We talked about a little bit in the interview, but polarizing.
Very. And it's funny. I tend to shy away from honey mustard. It's just one of those things. I love desserts.
You're allergic to it, Mr. Mustard sommelier.
Basically. No. I love desserts. I love sweet things. But again, most of the honey mustard in the U.S. is very, very cloyingly sweet because it's
trash.
You said it, not me. But the thing about the Maille is that you actually taste the honey. You actually get the heat from the mustard. It's not just sugar.
It's sweet.
Yeah,
it's sweet. You can't deny it has honey in the name. Yeah, it has definitely some characteristics of Dijon. It's not being masked by that. Again, on some potatoes. I could see that being cool. What else? What else are we doing with this stuff?
It's great on chicken, pork chops. It's also great. I've mixed it with a little bit of horseradish, sour cream, or actually like the crema mexicana. And drizzled it over top of a steak. Absolutely killer. But it's one of those things that it's taken me some time to get used to working with honey mustard because I had stayed away from it the vast majority of my life.
But really, really nice though, and definitely could see myself cooking with it. So now we're on to the hot honey. Yeah. You obviously had to enter hot honey.
Yep.
Were you at the company when they were developing this? When you started seeing hot honey popping a little bit?
So we were developing it during the pandemic, actually. And I was having packages of it shipped to my house as we were tasting through it. And then whenever we launched, Mike's was absolutely ecstatic with the product whenever we launched as well. I think it's a different play on honey mustard, right? It's not as sweet. There's a lot less honey in it. You get a little bit of that chili pepper at the back end.
It's very cool.
Yeah. It's an amazing product. It's the first brand collab that we've done in the States. And I want to say we were probably one of the first that Mike's had done as well.
So that's the end of our mustard tasting, but it's not the end of our tasting.
Yeah.
You brought
Cornichon.
So this reminds me, are there other products that Maille does? I know you've got Cornichon here.
Yeah. So globally, we produce oil, we produce vinegar. We have, if you're at our facility in Chevalny, we have these beautiful big vats of balsamic vinegar that have been around for years and years and years and years. We produce sherry vinegar, olive oil. So what we do is we find the best and we partner with them, and that's what we produce.
I mean, the French gherkin is unique. I think that other gherkins around the world, or even like those types of half sours or sours, are different. Like there's more floral notes in here.
Yeah, a lot more floral notes. You're gonna get. It's not nearly as kind of like they're acidic, but they're not like super powerfully acidic like you would in like a New York style like full sour pickle. Then there's this kind of like warming spice that you get. And even with the pickled onions as well, like I actually love the little pickled onions. I would eat just a jar of the pickled onions too. I use them a lot in different sauces as well. I'll just chop them up. Whenever I'm making tartar sauce, I use cornichons now instead of like a dill pickle.
So Brandon, we had Jeremy on. He was talking all about, restaurant applications and how it's done in, with the big boys.
Yeah.
But you yourself, you travel the world. You're eating at restaurants all the time. And I'd love to get a sense of how, Dijon mustard is being cooked with in restaurants. This is like the tip of the spear for innovation in the culinary world, like the fine dining restaurants, Michelin restaurants, even, the more, casual spots. Everyone's cooking with mustard these days. Yep. What are you seeing?
So we're seeing it across all different, and to your point, right? It's not just Michelin. It's all the way down to Joe's Diner on the corner, right? I think that's really the cool thing about Dijon and Maille in general is the fact that it can be utilized across all different environments, styles of cuisine, cooking. What we're seeing a ton of is utilizing it in sauces, right? And again, as I think most of us know, like a mustard cream sauce is one of the things that we've seen a ton of, but utilizing it in very interesting ways. So whether they're utilizing a little bit of mustard inside a stock with like some tarragon as kind of like a pan sauce for chicken, going with different ingredients inside mashed potatoes, right, to kind of enhance flavors of mashed potatoes, and to the point, you can roast potatoes with it as well and give it more flavor along that line. And we're seeing it as well, again, not only on sandwiches, but also paired with different things like pistachio and mustard. We're seeing, again, I think to me, like a good mozzarella and mustard, right? A way to cut through that fat.
Yeah.
And then also just kind of standalone, right? I think that whenever people are developing like gourmet hot dogs, gourmet hamburgers, they're using it in that, and they're using that more and more now than we are seeing some of the other styles of mustard that are out there. So again, it's a super versatile thing. It's one of those things that you don't have to be at a Michelin star restaurant, though they're probably using Dijon. And again, the guy down the street on the corner that's making your favorite chopped cheese is probably
Joe's
making
Diner.
Exactly.
Everyone's favorite diner. I mean, Pete, let's talk about pizza. Because in New Jersey, there's this
the mustard pie.
Great tradition of putting mustard on pizza in this little pocket in New Jersey. But then having done a lot of tastings of Maille and other Dijon, I feel like, yes, it's different. Yeah. But it works with the tomatoes and the acidity, of course, with cheese, and then with any kind of meat that you have and vegetable.
Oh yeah. Whenever I first discovered that pie 4 or 5 years ago, it was something that I had really never heard of, living even in Poughkeepsie, which is not too far from where that mustard pie exists. I started playing around with it, and it's one of those things that works so well. It sounds so crazy, but yeah, man, it's so good. And utilizing Maille to do that, it plays so well in that environment, especially really, really good dough, really, really good cheese, small amount of tomato, right? You don't need a ton. The mustard is there to act as your sauce. Ah, man, it's...
Yeah, rich country, the Maille rich country. You can see that on a pizza.
Definitely. And even just over top of your typical, I mean, listen, if everybody's out there buying Domino's or Pizza Hut, like you can also dip it in there too, and it's absolutely delicious.
I mean, we put Cholula on it.
Yeah.
We put, all sorts of hot honey on it. Let's put some Dijon on the pizza.
Exactly.
Let's do it.
Game. Let's do it. Let's start the trend.
Brandon, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about Maille and just working me through all the different styles of mustard. And you seem like you're not getting sick of mustard anytime soon.
Not at all. It's my wife. Whenever I first started this role, she was like, I don't like mustard. And now she's like, did you put mustard in that? And I'm like, yeah, no, I put mustard in it. She's like, okay, good. I'm going to like it then. So she's come full circle, and I still eat spoonfuls of mustard on a regular basis. Yep. And the cool thing about it is that not only does it taste delicious, it's an antibacterial, it's antimicrobial, it's good for you, it's healthy if you're on that weight loss journey as well. I lost 100 pounds during the pandemic, so I use mustard a lot to do that.
Thank you for putting in the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
This is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.